I'm a lifelong learner. I'm a language teacher. For the last 8 years, I have worked in an all-girls high school in Toronto where I teach French. And last year, I started my MA in Language and Literacy Education at OISE. In reflecting on my understanding of what it means to be a language teacher, I reflected on my experiences as a yoga student. And in doing so, it became clear to me that my experiences as a student of yoga have shaped my pedagogical approach in the classroom. The most important lesson I've learned as a yoga student is that it's not about getting it right or perfecting a pose, but rather showing up on the mat and being present in that moment. In yoga, I may never get my legs perfectly straight up in the air, but it's important that I keep up my practice. As a teacher, I see myself as one who is present with each student on her learning journey and guides her in building the confidence she needs to keep learning French, rather than correcting every mistake. My goal is to help students believe in themselves, to help them realize that they have the talent and the ability to learn. In yoga, there are hundreds of poses one can learn. One of the most important lessons, however, that I've learned is to surrender. We can't master every pose, and it's not about that. I do my best, and then I surrender to the pose. To hold on to the ego is frustrating and exhausting. Likewise, in this course, I learned about many different methods, but there was no way I could master them all. And some of them, like the silent approach, actually frustrated me. In yoga, we are taught to turn our attention within, to focus on breath, and to reconnect with the source of love in our lives. In this course, every so often, I turned within and asked myself, how can I apply this approach, this method, to my class? Who are my students? What are my objectives? How will they benefit from this approach? In reflecting on this approach and on methods, I can say that I connect a lot of what I do to the communicative approach for language teaching, wherein I'm guiding my students through games and activities in using language to communicate. I have organized several hands-on cooking activities. I have my own YouTube channel where I post videos of myself and friends speaking in French. And I use TV5 and other authentic resources in the classroom. In yoga, different props like mats and bolsters and blocks are used to support the body to release tension. In the L2 classroom, Arnold and Ducati discuss the use of technology in the language classroom, and they touch upon how technology can be integrated to help students develop listening skills, speaking skills, to encourage learner autonomy, and to facilitate collaboration. This was a set of readings that I connected with personally and deeply. Indeed, technology has been a growing aspect of my own teaching practice. For the last 2 years, I have been a leader and member of the Teacher Learning Leadership Program, where I have collaborated with my colleagues in science and in core French on the common goals of technology integration. This past summer, I led a workshop at the University of Ottawa for FSL teachers on how they could integrate technology to encourage collaboration and communication. I have also developed and created my own website and have presented at various Ministry of Education conferences. Learning different poses in yoga takes a lot of patience and becomes easier with practice. Similarly, being a language teacher takes years of practice and patience. Each day in the classroom teaches us a lesson in compassion and improves our skills as teachers. Each week in CTL at OISE also took a lot of discipline and patience. And perhaps more importantly, it took being open to learning about different methods for teaching. It took accepting that we don't have all the answers and that there are still so many questions to ask. While some of the approaches we studied, like communicative approach or total physical or use of technology may resonate with me more, it was still important for me to be open to learning about and trying out other approaches. Practice of yoga requires patience and intuition, and sometimes being literally willing to turn your life upside down. As a language teacher, I don't have the right answers. I don't always have them about what's the best approach. And sometimes I get unexpected questions in my class. And this can be both exciting and scary, like being upside down on your head. But it's the unexpected that keeps things interesting and fresh. And it's the unexpected that keeps me wanting to learn. In more recent years, I have explored using task-based approaches to language teaching, wherein I integrate drama specifically. Tasks are meaningful activities that require students to communicate. They ask students to use language for action. In my own classroom, I found drama to be a good context for adopting a more action-based approach to learning French. Indeed, I have started to think about the use of drama as a means to propel students to actually speak French. In recent weeks, I've been exploring the use of dramatic tableaux, wherein students create sculptures or poses with their bodies, representing pivotal moments in the lives of characters, and then use these tableaus as the starting point for a dialogue. Just like in a yoga class, being a language teacher requires one to be willing to take risks and to try out new ideas. It's in the process of exploring and trying that we learn about ourselves and those around us. My yoga teacher will tell you that yoga is 99% practice and 1% theory. It's an expansion of ourselves. We learn from trying it out ourselves. I have deepened my learning about second language teaching from observing my classmates during the microteach and trying out and participating in their different activities. I still remember Gosokigi and Makanroti from Shakina's total physical response-based lesson of Malay. And I took this lesson away with me and into my own classroom. Actually, I took it in my grade 9 academic French class, where we played charades and students mimed different actions, asking their peers to create sentences. Larson and Friedman described total physical response as an approach where language is synchronized to movement, and the microteach I experienced showed me that this approach can help students internalize language structures. A pivotal moment in my teaching experience happened 2 years ago when I designed a unit around the theme of poverty and social justice as part of the novel study Trésor d'Haïti. With my students, I co-constructed a social justice campaign called Sauver la planète avec les bobettes. The project involved raising awareness about the lives of women in Haiti after the devastating earthquake of 2010. I invited Maggie Hayes of We Care with Underwear to my class to speak about her experience in working with women. Students were so inspired by her story that we organized our own campaign to collect new underwear to be sent to Haiti to uphold women's dignity and hygiene. In fact, the entire school became involved in this campaign, and the project gave students a sense of empowerment. It allowed them to work on a project that was of their own design and meaningful to them. They were no longer interested in their marks on the project. What they cared about was making a difference. As a teacher, I took this lesson away from me. When I'm stuck on how to teach a certain concept or skill, I ask myself, how can I make this meaningful to my students? This got me thinking about Kumaravadavelu and his argument that the search for divisions between different methods of language teaching is futile because there really is so much overlap between the different methods or approaches. Rather than focusing on one method or approach, in my classes I embraced many based on the needs of my students, and I asked myself continuously, How can I make my class more accessible to more students? How can I make my class meaningful to students? What can I do to spark their interest, to get them excited? Because if the class is meaningful, then students will want to be there and they'll want to learn French. Kumara Vadavelu writes about learner-centered approaches to language teaching, where language is seen as allowing learners to make connections beyond the classroom, where practices of culture are reflected and explored, and where the central purpose of language instruction is communication. In this approach, students learn from each other and from working together. I connect this to my experiences integrating social justice-based projects in the classroom. For the last 4 years, I have been collaborating with teachers in local elementary schools to organize play performances. My students in grade 11 have been challenged to write and illustrate children's books in French, to create their own stories, and then to dramatize them for the stage. And students in grades 1, 2, and 3 have brought in canned foods as an admission ticket to our French plays. And these canned goods have in turn been donated to a local charity. What students tell me is that what they took away from the experience was the power it gave them to make a difference in their own community. They found this project meaningful. They were motivated to do it. It became important to them, and grades took on a secondary importance. If I were to ask those students today, what grade did you get in the class, or what grade did you get on this project? They wouldn't remember. But if I were to say, tell me about the project, they would have tons of stories to share. I come away from CTL 3002 with a renewed sense of wonder and excitement in my classroom. Being a language teacher to me means being caring towards my students and being flexible in my approach. To me, being a good language teacher is not about committing to one method of teaching, but rather being willing to try out so many different methods in order to meet the many different needs and identities of those students in your classroom. Context is also so important. What works for me in a core French high school setting may not resonate with adult learners in an ESL context. This course has highlighted for me the importance of devoting time and energy to learning, to renewing my sense of wonder in teaching methods, to reflecting on who I am as a teacher and seeing what works for me and my students in my own class. My future goals in yoga involve learning how to do a handstand. I don't know if I'll ever get there, but I'm willing to go on the journey. My future goals in language teaching include learning how to uphold a more action-based, CEFR-based approach to language teaching. As a researcher and as a teacher, I want to explore and to continue to learn how drama can be used and integrated in an action-oriented approach to teaching French. And I hope that doing so will inspire more students to want to learn French.